After 2 decades in power, Yahya Jammeh has proven that he was only offering lip service to patriotism, piety, or Pan-Africanism, as he is poised ready to set the Gambia alight for the audacity of Gambians to want change. He is being laid bare for the phony that he has always been by hiding behind Islam, calls to patriotism and Pan-Africanism ideals. These lofty ideals were needed in earning the people's trust, which was a critical component of setting the stage for Yahya's takeover of everything Gambian. The monster that became Yahya Jammeh did not emerge overnight. A systematic manipulation of the Gambian psyche constructed the Frankenstein monster. He capitalized on our highly held Gambian values to serve his needs and then turned them on their heads. He will use our religion and our religious leaders, use our elders and community leaders, our griots, and every Gambian custom, tradition, and value would literally have to go to work for Yahya Jammeh. Worse yet, the population will be cowed into submission by introducing alien concepts to which Gambians are unaccustomed: killings, enforced disappearances, torture, public humiliation, tribalism, and total disregard and disrespect for religious and community elders. Nothing was taboo under Yahya Jammeh anymore. This disregard for existing norms started when he dragged former public servants in front of commissions of inquiries in the name of accountability, a lofty ideal in theory, but to Yahya this was to be public spectacle aimed at ridiculing and shaming former officials regardless of their age or status in their respective communities. To many, this was a noble ideal. Instead of commissions being held with limited public access and findings published later on, the general public and media houses were invited to see shame on display. After this, no one will be spared under Yahya Jammeh. The reward for this was in Yahya's favor. People who could speak out against his excesses, because of their standing in the community, kept quiet for want of privacy and dignity. The few that couldn't help but be in the spotlight towed his line to avoid shame and indignity. All were to bend to Yahya's will or stay mute. On the other side of the spectrum, while tearing down the fabric of Gambian society, he was building himself up and indoctrinating the populace to reject everything and everyone before him. The former government and its officials, he would say, engaged in thievery and built nothing for 30 years. Worse yet was the British colonial infrastructure that for 400 years built only 2 hospitals and 2 schools. But with the commissions not finding most of the former officials culpable of any gross misconduct or embezzlement, public sympathy and trust was on their side and were set on making a comeback. But the master deceiver has other tricks up his sleeve. If he was to maintain any credibility after promising to go back to the barracks at the end of the transition, he has to make it look like he did not renege on his promise at will. The claim would be that since he was able to accomplish so much more than the British and the PPP government combined in such a short period of time, he has the potential to take the country even further if only he would stay on and continue the good work. In came the elders to plead with him to resign from the army and contest the upcoming elections as a civilian. Groups flocked to the State House on an almost weekly basis, all pleading for the same cause, and GRTS was on hand to make sure the citizens heard and saw it all. Of course, now we know it was all staged, thanks to politically shrewd allies out for their own good. Prior to the staging of these calls for him to resign, he had to clean the space and make it receptive to his candidature. With no political experience or education for that matter, he knew from the onset that when the political space opened up, he stood little to no chance against the seasoned politicians from both the ruling and opposition parties of the First Republic, and so he outlawed their participation in the political process that was due to take place in 1996. After the mandated transition period, The political space was open to all except the targeted few who posed the greatest threat to Yahya's ambition. Anyone who ever held a presidential or prime ministerial position in the Fourth Republic was disqualified. Anyone who ever held a vice presidential position in the Fourth Republic was disqualified. Anyone who ever held a ministerial position in the Fourth Republic, which was also a parliamentary system, meaning ministers can serve as parliamentarians as well, was unqualified. Every son and daughter of the Gambia who was known in the political space at a national level was suddenly unqualified, except for two. Sidia Jatta and Halifa Saleh, the leaders of the People Democratic Organization for Independence and Socialism, were the only two politicians from the Fourth Republic allowed to contest the elections. But principled as they are, and constitutional politicians that they are, the junta was no place for these Republican politicians, and so they earned the wrath of the council after overtures were made to them for ministerial and cabinet positions in the junta, which they turned down. They would eventually be arrested and jailed for their principles. This move essentially killed the competition, and Yahya looks set to rule for another 5 years with no one to stand in his way, or so he thought. The emergence of veteran lawyer Ousainou Darboe on the political scene sent shockwaves through the military junta, who expected to have killed all effective competition. With lawyer Ousainou Darboe's declaration of his candidature, the fragmented parties flocked to him, and all the disenfranchised supporters of the banned parties found solace and embraced Ousainou Darboe. This sent Yahya into a frenzy, knowing what that meant. At the start of the counting of the votes, lawyer Ousainou Darboe had to take refuge in the foreign embassy due to physical threats to his life by armed soldiers. This was the second act of treason by Yahya Jammeh in 2 years. Darboe was pegged the likely winner of the election, and so physical action was needed to subvert the will of the people. From that day on, lawyer Ousainou Darboe and the United Democratic Party became public enemy number one as far as Yahya Jammeh is concerned, and he will plot and scheme for the next 2 decades to put a lid on the activities of the United Democratic Party. In the subsequent 2001 elections, he will lift the ban on all the previously banned parties with the intent of fragmenting the United Democratic Party, as all allies are sure to surface. But the party has proven itself a worthy adversary. He would have to resort to intimidations, arrests, killings, disappearances, and even legal means to silence the UDP to no avail. Lawyer Darboe will be barred from contesting subsequent elections by the institution of age limits, outside of which he will fall. But a party as big as the United Democratic Party was not personality-centered, so all likely successors needed to be purged out of the party. Mamadou Lamin Singul Nyasi, Femi Peters were effective political strategists, and they would be arrested and jailed and tortured on several occasions to instill fear into the party to no avail. Not so stoic or principled was Usman Rambo Jatta, who became youth mobilizer but ended up switching allegiances for political favors. Amadou Sane, qualified enough to replace Ousainou Darboe as party leader, became a target and would eventually be jailed on frivolous charges beyond the electoral season. But the United Democratic Party just would not die. So in typical military strongman style, he chose to show how far he would go to stop the UDP once and for all by arresting and torturing to death Ibrahima Solo Sandeng, the youth mobilizer of the United Democratic Party, for being bold enough to speak up for electoral reforms to ensure a level playing field. The ensuing events will send the tyrant packing out of the State House, something he never imagined, as he was set to rule for 1 billion years. True to his leadership responsibilities, lawyer Ousainou Darboe summoned his entire executive and held a press conference to alert the nation to the happenstances and what their response would be. They would emerge from that press conference arm in arm, marching towards the police station, chanting, "We need Solo Sandeng, dead or alive." Sure enough, Yahya Jammeh and his oppressive machinery were waiting to put what they thought would be the final nail in the coffin of the United Democratic Party. The entire executive of the main opposition party were pounced upon and thrown in jail. This was in April 2016, and with the elections due in December 2016, the court case was sure to drag past December. Delighted at his fate accomplished, he was sure the UDP was dead and buried. Yet again, Yahya would be dead wrong. It would seem he had underestimated the will and determination of Gambians in general and the UDP in particular. What happened next will again shock Yahya to the core of his being, and rightly so. Solo Sanding was a martyr after all, and Yahya would wish he never touched him or the UDP so heavy-handedly. This move drove a wedge between Yahya and the fence-sitting Gambians by exposing his oppressive nature in broad daylight to which Gambians are not accustomed. Even those in denial or claiming legality to shield his excesses took a pause and had to rethink their position. The next move was unanticipated and would spell disaster for Yahya and his cabal.